Hello viewers, welcome to UVolve, the channel for database and data professionals. This is the first part of the topic on integrating Oracle database with Microsoft Active Directory to centrally authenticate and manage database users. And in this part, I am going to demonstrate how to create a free Microsoft Active Directory server in an Oracle VirtualBox Virtual Machine. So viewers, Oracle Database can directly authenticate Microsoft Active Directory users and authorize login to the database without engaging traditional Oracle Enterprise User Security methods. This authentication framework is called Centrally Managed Users or CMU. This is actually very convenient for the users as well as for the administrators, as by simply adding, deleting or modifying an user in the Active Directory, the user administration can be done for the database also. So let's learn how we can implement this excellent feature. I am dividing this topic into 4 parts. In the first part, we will create our Active Directory in a Windows Server 2019 on a VirtualBox Virtual Machine. In the second part, we will create an Active Directory authenticated database user to log into our Oracle database. In the third part, we will configure Kerberos authentication for a passwordless database connection from an AD user. And in the fourth part, we will see how we can integrate other RDBMS like MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Postgres, etc. with Microsoft Active Directory. I am using virtual machines created using Oracle VirtualBox for this demo, and I also have a full series of tutorials on Oracle VirtualBox Virtual Machines, starting from how to install it, create and manage virtual machines, etc. Watch the full series and create your own virtual IT lab to learn database, Unix, Linux, networking, or any other area in the IT world where you want to be an expert. I am going to set up our Active Directory in a Windows Server 2019. You can even use any later version of the Windows Server if you have, and if you don't have, you can download the evaluation version from Microsoft for free, because the evaluation version will work for 3 months, which is enough for your experiments and learning. And if you want to download, this is what you have to do. First, search for this Microsoft Windows Server 2019 download, and in the result, first follow this link, Windows Server 2019 Microsoft Evaluation Center. And in the list of downloads, select the 64-bit edition ISO downloads under the English United States. And once we click on the link, it will start downloading. And it's going to be a huge file of size around 5+ gigs. And it is going to take a couple of minutes based on your internet speed, because I have a licensed version of the server software. So I'm going to stop this here. Make sure to remember the ISO download location, because we have to browse to the part of the ISO image from the virtual machine to start the installation. Now let's go to our VirtualBox Virtual Machine console. I am using the release 7 of the Oracle VirtualBox software, which is the latest when this video is published, and install it on a 64-bit Enterprise Edition Windows 10 desktop that I am using as a host. As you can see, I have a lot of VMs and they are put in different groups for easier manageability. When you select a group, then the second menu in the top left corner changes to group, and when you select any of the VMs, then it changes to machine. Don't worry about groups, because you can add the VM to a different group even after it is created by simply right-clicking and then select this Move to Group option, and under that you can move it to a new group or an existing group, or even you can drag and drop the VM to a different group. Now to install our Windows Server 2019, I'm going to create a virtual machine. So I'll select this machine menu, then under that click on the new option. Let's give a name like WinSVR1, and the folder selected to create the virtual machine disk files and any related files are selected as d:\virtual machines. Make sure that this location has ample amount of space. I suggest at least 100 gigs free to install the Windows Server 2019. If you want, you can change this location. Simply click on this drop down and select this other option, and from there you can go to a different location. Then the ISO image. I'm going to select this ISO image shortly. Let's skip it for now. Then the type, Microsoft Windows, and the version, we are going to select the Windows 2019 64-bit. Then directly go to this hardware section, and under that it is selecting the base memory as 2 gigs by default. I am going to make it as 4 gigs for the Windows Server. If you have enough memory available in the host machine, you can even increase it to like 8 gigs or 12 gigs. In my case, I have a lot of memory, as you can see, 204 gigs available in the host machine. And similarly, in the processors section, we see it is selecting one processor by default, but I have 32 CPUs available in the host machine, so I'm going to increase it to 2. Similarly, you can also increase it for a better performance, like 3 or 4 even. Then enable EFI, that is extensible firmware interface, that I am not selecting. Then under the hard disk file location, it has selected under the virtual machines folder, and the size selected is 50 gigs. I'm going to make it as 100 gigs, and the file format is VDI, which is the most versatile, flexible, and portable. So we are going to select this image format. There are other options available like VHD, VMDK, etc., but we are going to select the VDI. Pre-allocate full size. We are not going to select it, because if we select it, all these 100 gigs will be allocated now, which is going to take a lot of time. And if we do not select it, the file will keep growing as we use it. So that option is good for us. And the other two options like use an existing virtual hard disk or do not add, these are not applicable for us. And with this basic information, I am going to click on the finish button to create the most basic structure of the virtual machine. And as we can see, the virtual machine is created here. But now we have to make a few more configuration changes for this virtual machine. So when this is selected, I'm going to click on the settings button. And from there, I'm going to take you to only the sections where I'm making any changes. Most of them are going to be kept as default. So in the general section, under the basics, we have already put the name, type, and the version. Then advanced description and disk encryption, these things we are not going to select. Then under the systems, again, the base memory that we have already selected is reflected here. And the boot order, we will unselect this floppy option because it is no more used. Then we will keep all the other options as default. Then let's go to processor section. As we can see, the two processors we selected are reflected there. Then go to display section. And here we see the video memory selected is 128 MB. This is good for us. Monitor count 1. Scale factor, we don't have to change anything here. Now graphic controller, by default it is selecting VBox SVGA. In most of the cases it will work, but if you face any difficulty in bringing up the virtual machine or its graphical user interface, you can try changing it to a different value there like VBox VGA or VM SVGA, etc. And we are not enabling 3D acceleration. Then let's go to storage section, and there we have one SATA controller which is coming as default, and under that we see the virtual hard disk that we created is attached as one attachment, and there is also one empty optical drive. Now if you want to add more virtual disks later on, this is where you can do by simply selecting the controller. Click either of these options, add optical drive or add a hard disk. If later on you feel that you need more space in your virtual machine, then we'll select the empty optical drive here, and this is where we are going to attach the Windows Server 2019 ISO image that we downloaded from Microsoft. So when this optical drive is selected, press this optical disk icon button here, and then select the choose a disk file option. And under that, we are going to browse to the location where we have kept our ISO image. In my case, I have kept it in a folder called Windows Server 2019. And I have two ISO images, one that I downloaded earlier, and this is the ISO image of the disk that I have purchased as a licensed version. So I'm going to select this one and then click on the open button. Next, we will go to the network section, and we see the first adapter is enabled by default. We have to change this attached to option here. We see this is NAT, that stands for network address translation, and instead of NAT we have to select bridged adapter here, and the name of the adapter will be selected automatically based on what network interface card you have installed in your host machine. Then under this advanced section, we have to change this promiscuous mode from deny to allow all for now. And with these basic settings, I am going to press the OK button to make the changes permanent for the virtual machine. And now we are ready to start or power up this virtual machine and install the Windows Server 2019. Before that, if you want, you can move to a different group. I want to move it to a group called Windows group. So I'll just simply drag this and drop it in the Windows group. So now all the settings are in place and we are ready to start our virtual machine named WinSVR1. So when it is selected, click on the start button on the top. The VM is powering up, which will take a couple of seconds. Then it will boot from the Windows Server ISO image and load the setup files to start the installation. As usual, Windows installation is quite simple and most of the things it will do automatically. I will fast forward the video to save time and I will resume when there is something worth mentioning or I am doing any changes. And the Windows Server setup screen has appeared. I will select the language to install as English United States, time and currency format also as English United States, and the keyboard or input method as US. You can change it as per your requirement, and then I will click the next button. Then I will press the install now button to start the installation. Then in this operating system selection screen, I'm going to select the Windows Server 2019 standard desktop experience. Make sure that you select only this option and then click on the next button. In this screen, accept the license terms and then click on the next button. Then in the installation type selection, we will select this second option, that is the custom install Windows only advanced. Then in this screen, for selecting the installation destination, we will select the only disk drive that we allocated to the virtual machine with 100 gigs space. We don't need to use the other options below, and we will then press the next button. Now the installation will begin and we'll be able to see the status for each of the action items. It's going to take around 5 to 10 minutes. I will pause the video and I will resume once we are at the last action item. So Windows setup needs a restart, which will be done automatically, or you can simply press the restart now button if you don't want to wait. This time, booting will take place from the hard drive where we installed the Windows Server. As per the boot order we set in the VM configuration, it will ask whether we want to boot from the CD or DVD, but don't press any key, so booting will be done from the hard drive automatically. Again, I will fast forward the booting process as it's going to take a minute or so. After the reboot, for the first time, it will ask to set an administrator password. Use a password of your choice, but as it is a server installation, you may have to select a minimum complexity level for the password and then press the finish button. You may not get a login screen automatically to supply the password. In that case, you have to go to the bottom right corner of the VM and amongst the series of buttons, right-click on the button with a down arrow icon, and from the context menu, select the Insert Ctrl-Alt-Delete option, which will then bring you the login screen. And then log in to your server as the administrator. During the first time login, Windows will set up the default policies and settings for the administrator. Then it will ask whether your PC will be discoverable in the network. Press the yes button. And then the server manager will also automatically start. Close any splash screens or information windows because we will anyway get them later on when needed. We will minimize the server manager window for now. Next, we need to install VirtualBox Guest Edition for Windows. This is important to get an optimal host and guest integration along with many benefits like full screen of the virtual machine window and better graphical user interface, etc. Right now, we see a much reduced size of the virtual machine window. To install the guest edition, go to Devices menu of the VM, then select the Insert the Guest Edition CD image. Wait a few seconds, then open the Windows Explorer, then select the CD drive which will display the installation files for different Windows architectures. Double-click the VBox Windows editions to start the guest editions setup and press the Next button. Let it select the default path and press the Next button. Then press the Install button to start the installation. This is going to take less than a minute. A few flickerings can happen, which is because of the graphic driver enhancements by the guest edition. And then it will ask for a reboot. You may reboot later on manually, but I will let it select the Reboot Now option and press the Finish button. Windows will restart and apply the new settings. Go to the bottom right corner of the VM and amongst the series of buttons, right-click on the button with a down arrow icon, and from the context menu, select the Insert Ctrl-Alt-Delete option, which will then bring you the login screen. Let the Server Manager start. Close any information windows. Minimize the Server Manager because we will configure the Server Manager after a few minutes. Right-click on the desktop and select the display settings, and in the resolution section select a higher resolution like 1280 by 960. Then press the Keep Changes button and close the display settings window. Next, to see the beauty of the guest edition, we will resize the virtual machine window and then maximize it again. And there we go. Now we see a full screen virtual machine window with maximum resolution. Please note that it is a full screen window but not a full screen in the monitor. To switch between the full screen window of the virtual machine and the full screen in the monitor, you need to go to the View menu of the virtual machine and from there select the full screen mode option. You can also toggle the views using the host key and the F button combination. In my case, the host key is the Windows button in the keyboard. As we can see now, it is full screen view in the monitor. Let's toggle it back to the window view. Next, we need to test the server's internet connectivity. It is not mandatory, but to receive any updates or download additional softwares, an internet connection will be required. We will use the default Internet Explorer browser. You can install a different browser of your choice. Use the recommended settings and press the OK button. Then in the address bar, just type in a common URL like google.com. Check the Do Not Show Future warning box and press the OK button for the security alert. If any contents are blocked by the Internet Explorer security, then that is fine, as we just need to test the internet connectivity. Then press the Close button and we can see the Google web page is displayed, so our internet connectivity test is successful. I just brought up the Server Manager window that was minimized before. Next, we will configure our server by adding some roles and features of a domain controller. Please note that before our server can operate as a domain controller with the new roles and features, there are some tasks to be completed. To see what are those tasks, let's click on this link, Add Roles and Features. Number 1, the admin account has a strong password. Number 2, static IP address is configured. Number 3, most current security updates are installed. Number 1 has been completed as I already set a strong password. And number 3, we will ignore as this is just our test server. If it insists, you can do it later on also, but we will take care of the number 2. That is, we will assign a static IP for the server, so your DHCP server on the router will not change the IP address of the server going forward. If the IP address changes for our domain controller, it will create problem for the clients to access it, as we don't have a DNS server in this configuration. Next, to set a static IP, right-click on the network icon on the bottom right corner of the Windows status bar, then select Open Network and Internet Settings. Then select Change Adapter Options. Right-click on the Ethernet adapter and go to its properties. Select Internet Protocol version 4, that is TCP/IPv4, then press the Properties button. We will change these options to obtain an IP address and DNS server address automatically, and instead we will hardcode it with some static values. As the server already has an IP address and we just want to make it static so it does not change going forward, so select Use the following IP address option here. Now to find out what IP address it currently has, let's open a command prompt window and type in the command ipconfig. Copy the IP address from the output and paste it here in the IP address field. Similarly, copy and paste the subnet mask and the default gateway, which is 192.168.1.1 in my case. In your case, this IP subnet and the gateway address may be different. Next, I am going to use two publicly available free DNS server addresses, which are 1.1.1.3 and 1.0.0.3, and put them in the preferred and alternate DNS fields. You can use any other DNS if it is accessible to you, and then press OK button and then close the network properties window. So now our domain controller has a static IP address. You can assign a static IP address to a computer in your network from your router also, if the router software provides that option to you. It is optional for you if you already set the static IP address in the Windows network settings the way I showed you. Let's do an internet connectivity test. As we can see, we are good so far. Let's close all these windows and press the next button in the Add Roles and Features wizard. We will come back and talk about the installation types mentioned in the screen shortly, but for now, press the next button again. Here we see in the list of candidate servers, we have our Windows 2019 server listed along with a very long name, which is very difficult to remember. So we will change the name of the server or the host name to something convenient. Let's go back to the previous step. Anyway, we have to restart this wizard once we change the host name for the server. You can also see this in the command output using the command hostname. So next we will change the name of our domain controller server to something easy so we will be able to use it in our network. So open Windows File Explorer, right click on this PC item and go to its properties. Then in the computer name, domain and workgroup settings, under the systems section, press the change settings link here. Then press the change button in the system properties window. Then in the computer name field, put the name that we have given to the virtual machine, that is WinSVR1, which will be easy for us to remember. Press OK. It will ask to restart. Let's close all other windows and then press OK. Press the Restart Now button. I will fast forward the video and I will resume once the restart is completed. So now after the reboot, the server manager has come up. Initially, under the roles and server groups, if the servers are shown in red, don't worry about that. Just wait for a few minutes and everything will be shown in green after we complete our remaining configurations. Now we have completed the prerequisite tasks for adding the roles and features for the Active Directory controller. So we will start the wizard again for adding the roles and features to our server. Now all these three tasks are completed. Click Next. Let the first option be selected, role-based or feature-based installation. Click Next. Our server is the only one in the pool which is selected automatically as the candidate. Click Next. Some of the roles will be selected by default, don't change them. And we will additionally select this Active Directory Domain Services role from this list. Under that role, it will need to install the features which are listed in the screen. Just click Add Features button, click Next. Again, let all the default features be added. Don't make any changes. Click Next, then click Install. It will take 4 to 5 minutes. Once you see installation succeeded message at the top, press the Close button to complete the required configuration. And now we see the server and the services are shown in green. But we see a notification flag at the top right corner. It is because we have added the roles and features, but our server is not yet operating as a domain controller. So we have to promote our server as a domain controller now. Click the notification flag where you will see the messages along with a link to promote the server as a domain controller. Click on that, and in the next screen, it will give us 3 options. Add a domain controller to an existing domain, which is not applicable for us because we don't have a domain yet. Then add a new domain to an existing forest, which is also not applicable to us. We don't have a forest yet. A forest is nothing but a collection of one or more domains. So the third option, to add a new forest, is applicable for us because we will create a forest with just one domain for our learning purpose. I'm going to use a domain name as manash.home as it is my home domain. You can select anything you like, such as yourname.com or .org, example.com, etc. As anyway, it's not a public domain. And then press the Next button. In the next screen, keep everything default. Just enter a directory service restore mode or DSRM password. This will be rarely used, as I believe you will never have to restore your directory services. Then press the Next button. In the next screen, ignore this delegation for the DNS server error message and press the Next button. In the next screen, you will see the NetBIOS domain name with the first part of your domain name selected by default. Press the Next button. Let it select the default locations for the log folders. Press the Next button. Then take a look at the review screen to make sure everything is correct. Then press the Next button. As long as you see all prerequisite checks passed message at the top with a green check mark, ignore all security and other warnings, as this is just our test domain, and then press the Install button. It will take 2 to 3 minutes and it will forcefully sign you out, as it has been promoted to a domain controller now, and that will require a restart of the Windows. Press the Close button. It will take a few minutes to apply the new settings on restart after the promotion. Bring the login prompt by sending the Ctrl-Alt-Delete key combinations as shown before. And this time you will see the login prompt has changed. As we see, the domain name is prefixed in front of the username. If you remember, we set the domain name as manash.home. So discarding the qualifier, that is the .home part, our domain name is Manash, which is prefixed to the username here. Supply the same password that you have set for the administrator. The server manager will start again automatically, and this time we will see the notification flag is off. And this has completed our very basic Active Directory controller configuration in a Windows Server 2019 VM. Now we will test the AD controller. Basically, what we are going to test is whether an AD user or domain user is able to log in to the domain using a client computer. If our test is completed successfully, then we can say that our AD domain controller is working perfectly. To do these tests, we need a computer with Windows operating system installed. You can use an existing Windows 10 or Windows 11 desktop except the host computer, or another VM that you already have with Windows operating system installed. I will create another VM with free evaluation version of Windows 11 Enterprise Edition 64-bit because that is the latest when this video is published. You can also create a VM and install Windows 10 instead. I have a separate video for creating a VM with Windows 10 Enterprise Edition 64-bit. Link for the video is given in the description. The steps to install Windows 10 or Windows 11 on a VM are more or less the same. If you want to skip the Windows 11 VM creation steps, just go directly to chapter 12 of this tutorial to continue with the remaining steps of creating the AD user and test the AD controller server. Now let's start with creating a Windows 11 Enterprise Edition virtual machine, and the first step is to download Windows 11 Enterprise Edition ISO image from Microsoft. First, let's search for this download Windows 11 Enterprise Edition, and in the search result, right click on this first one, that is Evaluation Center Windows 11 Enterprise, and open it in a new tab. And then in this page, Windows 11 Enterprise, under the Get Started for Free section, I will select this link, download the ISO Windows 11 Enterprise. And in the next page, it is going to ask for some of your personal information like the first name, last name, email, company name, which I'm keeping as personal, country as United States, company size as 1, and job role also personal because I'm downloading this just for my personal learning purpose. Then the phone number, questions, comments, I'm keeping it blank. And you can check this box if you want your information to be shared with Microsoft partners. I am keeping it unchecked, and then I will click on this Download Now button. Then in this screen, under the English United States ISO Enterprise Download section, I am going to select this 64-bit edition, click on that link, and the download will immediately start. And if we click on that, we'll be able to see that the size of the download is around 5 gigs, which is going to take 3 minutes. For me, based on your internet speed, this time will vary. As I have already downloaded this ISO image, so I'm going to stop this. Please make a note of the download location because we are going to use this ISO image file for the Windows installation in our virtual machine. So I will cancel this. Now to create the virtual machine, let's go back to our VirtualBox console. And as you can see, I have a lot of virtual machines and they are put in different groups. Don't worry about these groups as of now. And to create the virtual machine, we'll first click on this machine menu, and under that, press the new option. And we'll put a name like Win11EE, that stands for Enterprise Edition. And the folder selected by default is D:virtual machines for my setup. If you want, you can change it to a location which has ample amount of space. I suggest at least 60 to 70 gigs. But for me, this location is fine. The ISO image, I'm not selecting this as of now, but we are going to do that shortly. And in the type, Microsoft Windows version, Windows 11 64-bit. Don't worry about this skip unattended installation. Anyway, this is grayed out. And then we'll directly go to this hardware section. And in the hardware section, we see the base memory selected is 4 gigs by default. This is good for Windows 11 installation. And as you can see in my host machine, I have around 200 gigs of physical memory available. Again, in your case, if you have a lot of physical memory, you can increase it or even decrease it, but 4 gigs is a good size. Then the processors selected by default is 2. As you can see, I have 32 CPUs available in the host machine. And in your case, if it is available, you can even increase it to 3 or 4, or at least keep 2. That is what I suggest. Then enable EFI, that stands for Extensible Firmware Interface. This is enabled by default. Then under the hard disk section, we can see the full path of the virtual disk that it is going to create with the name win11ee.vdi. And the size selected by default is 80 gigs for Windows 11. Let's keep it that way. Again, you can reduce it by a little, like 60 or 70, but I suggest you keep it at least 60 gigs for the virtual disk. Then we see the hard disk file type. Under this section, we have a couple of options there. And this VDI format is the best one because it has a lot of flexibility and portability, so we are keeping the VDI option, that is VirtualBox Disk Image. Then pre-allocate full size, we are not going to check this. If we do that, then this entire 80 gigs will be allocated now. But if you keep it unchecked, then the file will grow as we use it. The other two options we are not selecting at this time. If we need, we can add even more virtual disks to this virtual machine in the future. And with this basic information, we will click on the finish button. And we have to set a couple of more configurations in the settings for this virtual machine. So when it is selected, we will press this settings button. And there are a lot of sections and options available. I'm not showing all of them. I'm going to show only the ones where we are going to make any changes. Name, type, and version already selected. Then we will directly go to Systems section. And under that, I will remove the floppy option from the boot order because we no more use the floppy option. Then under the extended features, I am unselecting this enable secure boot option. Then we'll go to the storage section, and under that we see there is one SATA controller and there is a hard disk that we already selected, and the optical drive is currently empty. And this is where we are going to attach the ISO image that we downloaded. So when this is selected, we will press this optical drive icon in the right, and then from there we will select the choose a disk file, this particular option. And then we will browse to the location where we have downloaded our ISO image from Microsoft. So I have kept it in a directory called Win11 Enterprise. So I'm going to select this ISO image and then press the open button. Then we'll go to the network section, and under that we see the first adapter is enabled by default and it is attached to NAT, that stands for Network Address Translation. We are not going to use this option. We have to use actually the bridged adapter, this particular option. Make sure that you select only this option. Then the name will be selected automatically based on what kind of network interface card you have installed in your host machine. Then under the advanced section, we see this promiscuous mode, and we will change it from deny to allow all for now. And rest of the things will keep as it is. And with these settings, I will press the OK button to save it. And now we are ready to start our virtual machine. And to do that, when the virtual machine is selected, we will press this start button. And as we can see in the right hand side, the VM is powering up. It will take a couple of seconds to give us the initial screen of the VM. And it is coming up. Press any key to boot from the CD or DVD. Press enter. Let's put it in the middle. It is going to take a few seconds to boot from the ISO image. So I will fast forward the video and I'll resume time to time when there is something worth to be mentioned or I'm making any changes to save time. So the initial Windows 11 setup screen has come up, and language to install by default it is taking English United States, time and currency English United States. We are okay with that. Press next. Keyboard US. Press next. Under the setup option, I would like to install Windows 11. This first option is applicable for us. We are not going to repair this PC, and then we have to check this box. I agree everything will be deleted, including files, apps, and settings, to have this button enabled for us. Now we can click on the next button, and we have to accept the license agreement. And the virtual disk that we attached to this virtual machine with 80 gig size is selected by default. We don't have to worry about formatting or creating partitions because Windows will take care of that automatically. So we will simply select the next button. So we are ready to install, and this is what the setup is going to do: install Windows 11 Enterprise Evaluation and keep nothing. So this evaluation version will be good for 3 months, and I believe that 3 months is enough for you to do any experiments with Windows 11. And after that, if you want, you can activate it or leave it like that. So we'll press the install button. As expected, Windows installation is quite simple, straightforward, and most of the things it will do automatically. Currently 10% is complete, so I will fast forward and resume the video time to time whenever there is something worth to be mentioned or I am making any changes. The installation is going to take around 10 minutes based on your system's performance. Of course, 50% complete, and as we can see, the PC will restart several times in between during this installation. 75% complete, and now we can see the message saying your PC will restart in a few moments. Virtual machine is restarting, and this time we don't have to worry about the boot order because the Windows is installed on the hard disk and it is going to boot from the hard disk itself. So the installation is still in progress. As we can see, it is 0% now. In the previous steps, the setup has actually copied all the Windows files to the virtual hard drive. 33% complete. The VM is restarting again for the second time. 94% complete. We are almost there. Now, Windows has given us the installation specific settings, and the country selected by default is United States. We are okay with that. Press the yes button. Keyboard layout, again US. Press the yes button. Want to add a second keyboard? Skip. Let it check for updates. Now we arrived at the Microsoft sign-in option. Actually, you don't have to specify any sign-in email ID here, and rather we'll go to the sign-in options. And then we'll select this domain join instead, this particular option. And then we need to put the owner of this PC or the virtual machine. You can put your name, and the name should represent who is going to use this device. So I will put a local admin user who is going to be the administrator of this virtual machine. So I'll put like local admin and then click next. And the password I will put a simple one that I can remember, that is welcome 1 2 3 4 5. Click next. Again confirm the password welcome 1 2 3 4 5. Then it will ask for some security questions, and again I will put something that I can remember. I recommend you put something that is relevant for you. For the first security question, I'm selecting what was your first pet's name. I will simply put AAA. Press enter. For the second question, I am going to select what is the name of the city where you were born. I'm again putting BBB. Press enter. For the third question, I'm selecting what was your childhood nickname, and I'm putting as CCC, and then we can press the next button. And under the privacy settings for your device, you can turn these options on or off as per your choice. I'm turning off the location service and the find my device also. Let's scroll down. Diagnostic data, I'm switching it off. Inking and typing, switching it off. Tailored experience, switching it off. Advertising ID, switching it off. And then I will click on the accept button. Then again it will check for Windows updates based on the selections that we have made. And as we can see, the Windows update is in progress, which is again going to take a couple of minutes based on your internet speed. In the meantime, if you want, you can take a look at a couple of new features introduced in Windows 11. As we can see, only 1% of the updates have been downloaded so far. So it is going to take a couple of minutes again, and I will pause the video and I'll come back once these steps are completed. 99% of the download has been completed. Download has been completed, and currently it is in the step 2 of installing the updates. 95% of the updates have been installed. So all the updates have been applied and it is restarting for the third time. And it has actually applied a lot of updates which is not yet done, and it is restarting for the fourth time. Okay, so after around 25 minutes and 4 restarts, it has given us the initial nice blue screen of Windows 11. Let's maximize this window, and here we have to send the Control-Alt-Delete key combination to get the login prompt. Our host keyboard and the virtual machine keyboard is not yet synchronized, so go to the bottom right corner, and in this down arrow button we will right click and send the insert Control-Alt-Del, this particular key combination, and we see the login prompt is there for the local admin user that we created, and we will put the password that we set as welcome 12345, and we see the greetings message from Windows 11 for the first time. Again, it is going to take a few more minutes to finalize the settings. We'll just allow it to do and finish its work. And finally, Windows 11 installation is now complete. Now, if you see, the interface of this virtual machine is shown in a window, and even if we maximize this window, we don't get a full screen. To resolve this issue, we have to install something called VirtualBox Guest Editions for Windows. And this is a piece of software that comes with the VirtualBox that gives us better integration with the host and the guest machine in terms of the keyboard, graphics, etc., and even the mouse pointer movement. And also you can share files and folders between the host machine and the guest machine, etc. To install the VirtualBox Guest Edition, we will click on the Devices menu of the virtual machine. Then we will select this Insert Guest Editions CD image. So the CD image is internally attached to the CD drive. Now we have to open the Windows File Explorer, and then we will scroll down and select the CD drive to list out all the files. And in this list of files, there are a lot of different setup options for the VirtualBox Guest Edition available. And because this is a 64-bit Windows installation, so we have to select this VBox Windows Editions. So double click on the setup for the VirtualBox Guest Edition. Click yes for the confirmation to start the setup for VirtualBox Guest Edition. Let's close the Explorer window. And this installation of Guest Edition is going to take hardly a minute, so we will just press the next button, and the default installation location, that is C:\program files, is okay, and click the next button, then install. There will be a couple of flickerings in between. This is because of the graphic driver enhancement being done for the VirtualBox virtual machine, and that is done. And it will ask for a reboot for the changes to take effect, and when the reboot now option is selected, we will click on the finish button. So this is going to be the 5th restart of our virtual machine before we get it in a fully usable state. And we'll log in as local admin again. Welcome 12345 as the password. Now we need to do a couple of more settings to get the full screen of the virtual machine. First, right click on the desktop and go to Display Settings, and under the Display Settings options, we'll go to Display Resolution, and we'll select a much higher resolution like 1280 by 960, and click on the Keep Changes, close this window, and then we will just resize this virtual machine window for one time, and there we go. We are able to see the full screen of the virtual machine. So now our Windows 11 VM to be used as a client of our domain controller server is 100% ready for the test, and we need to let it join the domain. And to do that, we need to create an AD user so we can log in from the Windows 11 VM using that user. To create that user, we will go back to our Windows Server 2019, that is our domain controller. Let's bring up the server manager. Then go to Tools menu, and from there select the Active Directory users and computers. And in this box, we will select the manash.home, that is our domain, expand this list. And from this list, we are going to select the users item, right click on the users item, and from there select the new option, and under that select the users. Let's create an example AD user with the name, say AD, no initials, the last name say expert. So AD expert is the full name, and the logon name say ADE001, which will be used to log into the domain. Now, if you see, the domain name, that is manash.home, is selected automatically with the ampersand at the beginning, and the user logon name will be manash/ADE001. Click on the next button, and the password, let's set a complex password which we can remember also. Say welcome with W in capital, has 1 2 3 4 5. Welcome with W in capital, has 1 2 3 4 5. Let's unselect this user must change password at the next logon. We want to keep that password for our testing purpose. Then click next and click finish. And the username AD expert is created in the domain. Now let's also expand this computers item here. And as you can see, it is not expanding, means it doesn't have anything to show. Even if we select this item, we don't see anything populated in the right hand side pane. So it means there is no computer joined yet to our domain. Now let's go back to our Windows 11 VM to let it join this domain. I have changed the background wallpaper of the Windows 11 VM to something simple. Now before we let it join the domain, let's first find out whether it can reach out to the domain controller or not using a ping command. So let's bring up the command window, and here we will simply put ping and the IP address of our domain controller. If you can remember, we have assigned a static IP address to this domain controller with 192.168.1.165. And as we can see, the ping command is returning the results, so it can reach out to the domain controller. So we'll have to do the same test from the domain controller also, whether that can reach out to this particular Windows 11 VM or not. So first we need to find out the IP address of this Windows 11 VM. So we'll use the command IP config, and here we see that the IP address is 192.168.1.168. Now let's go back to the domain controller, bring up one command window, and we will do a ping test with 192.168.1.168. That is the IP address of our Windows 11 VM. And we can see that the ping command is timing out, means it is not able to reach out to our Windows 11 VM. So it usually happens because of the default Windows Defender firewall, which is enabled in the Windows 11 computers by default. So we have to disable the Windows Defender firewall in our Windows 11 VM. So let's go back there and then click on the start menu. From there, go to settings and then go to privacy and security. Under that, select this Windows security. Then go to firewall and network protection. Then we have to disable the firewall for all these three options, that is the domain network, private network, and the public network. First, let's disable the firewall in the domain network. Click on the domain network link here and toggle this button, Microsoft Defender Firewall, which is currently on. So we'll switch it off. Click yes to confirm and dismiss the notification. Then go back to the previous window. So the domain network firewall is currently off. Scroll down, then go to private network. And here also we'll switch off the Windows Defender firewall. Press the yes button to confirm. Then go back to the previous window. Scroll down and click on this public network link. And there also we will disable the firewall. Press yes to continue. And go back to the previous window, and now we have disabled the Windows Defender firewall for all these three networks. Please note that disabling the firewall is not a recommended measure. We are doing it only because it is our test environment and there is no security threats. Now let's close these windows and go back to the domain controller to do the ping test again. And this time the ping command is able to get a reply. It means it is able to reach out to our Windows 11 VM. So the communication between the Windows 11 VM and the domain controller is established. So now we should be able to proceed with adding the Windows 11 VM to our domain controller. So let's go back to our Windows 11 VM again. And now before we can add this Windows 11 VM to the domain, we need to let it know where the domain is. As you remember, our domain name is manash.home. So this Windows 11 VM doesn't know about that particular domain. It only knows the IP address of the domain controller. So we have to make a small change so it is aware that there is a domain named manash.home by setting the DNS with the IP address of our domain controller for this particular VM. So right click on the network icon in the bottom right corner of the VM, then go to Network and Internet Settings, then click on the Ethernet Settings, scroll down, and here we see DNS server assignment. This is currently automatic DHCP, so we'll have to edit and change it to manual, and there in the IPv4 IP address we will put the IP address of our domain controller, that is 192.168.1.165, and DNS over HTTPS, this will be turned off. Alternate DNS, here we will put our free DNS that I mentioned before as 1.1.1.3, and the IP version 6 is turned off by default. Then we will save it. Now close this window, and now we are ready to add this Windows 11 VM to our domain. To do that, we'll click on the Start menu again, then go to Settings and scroll down in the right hand side pane. Under the System Properties, we will click the About option here, then scroll down. Then under Related Links, we see this Domain or Workgroup. Click on that, and in the resulting window, we see this option to use a wizard to join a domain or workgroup. Click the Network ID button. So we will click this button, and then we'll select this first option where it says this computer is a part of a business network. I use it to connect to other computers at work. Then press the next button, and here also we'll select this first option. My company uses a network with a domain, although we know it's not a company, it's just our private domain. Then press the next button, and it is asking us to keep the following information ready, that is the username, password, the account domain name, computer domain, etc. So we have all this information. So click on the next button. Then the username, it is selecting by default the local admin user, but here we have to use the domain user that we created a few minutes back with the name AD Expert. So if you remember, the AD Expert is a domain user, and the logon name we set for the user was ADE001. So we'll use that ADE001, and the password welcome with W capital #12345. And the domain, we have to set the actual domain name here, which is manash.home. And when we'll click next, it will search for this particular domain for its existence. And the computer name it is selecting by default, which is nothing but this particular computer. If you don't like this name, you can change it using the same method that I showed you before while changing the host name of the domain controller server. So now the computer domain will be again manash.home, and we will click the next button, and it's asking for type the name and password of an account with permission to join the domain. So here also we are going to use the same domain user that we created with the name ADE001. So use ADE001 and the password welcome has 12345 and the domain manash.home. Please note that this domain name is selected in caps or uppercase by default. You will not have any option to change it to a lowercase. So click OK and then click the next button, and it asks what level of permission or access you want to grant to this particular user named ADE001 in this domain manash.home. So if you want to grant it administrator, you can select here, but again it will ask for the administrator credential for this particular VM. But we want to just add it as a standard account, so let it select the first option, then click on the next button and then finish. Then click OK and it will ask for a restart. So we will close all the other windows here and then press the restart now button. And next time we will see how we'll be able to use the domain user to log into this virtual machine once it restarts. And this time we see that the login screen has changed and we see it is prompting to provide the password for our domain user named ADE001, which belongs to the domain named manash.home. So we'll provide the password welcome with W capital has 12345. And as you can see, it is displaying the full name of the user, that is AD Expert. And it will take a couple of seconds to put the settings in place when the user logs in for the first time. And we are in. The background wallpaper has changed automatically. Now let's go back to our domain controller and see what has changed there. Go to Tools menu, and under that we'll go to Active Directory Users and Computers. Expand the manash.home domain and click on the Computers section. And here we see that this time the name of our Windows 11 VM is appearing. It means it has joined the domain. And as I have explained earlier, under the user section we should already have the user AD Expert that we created a few minutes back. And now we can also see the Windows 11 VM under the Computer section who has joined the domain. So this has completed the configuration of our most basic home domain, and you can play around, test or experiment with different functionalities of the domain controller. You have now both a domain controller as well as a client machine. With this, I am concluding the first part of this topic. The next part is going to be more interesting because we are going to integrate the Oracle database with this Active Directory so that the Oracle database users can be authenticated through our Active Directory. So viewers, please provide your feedback in the comment section of the video and hit the like button if you found it useful. That will mean a lot to me and help grow this channel.